Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm your host, DelSheree Gladden. I am a USA Today bestselling author and a high school English teacher. And I have another educator on the show this week. I'm excited to be talking to Karen McCoy, former Four Corners area resident, but still has ties here that we'll talk about. And we're going to be talking about her book, The Etiquette of Voles. This is her debut novel out from Kinkajou Press in Albuquerque. So Karen, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Karen McCoy. As DelSheree said, I lived in the Four Corners area for 4 years. I now currently live in Northern California with my husband. My husband is originally from the Four Corners area. As well as being an author, I am a librarian, and I also maintain a blog where I interview other authors, and I have reviewed books for Library Journal, children's literature, and I wrote a feature article for School Library Journal and contributed a chapter to Now Write Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, I'm glad to connect with you. We got to meet in person recently at the Mesa Verde Literary Festival, so that was really nice. And your press is based in Albuquerque. It's an imprint of Artemisia Press, and tell us a little bit about The Etiquette of Voles. This is... What range would you say middle grade? Upper, lower?
I would definitely say upper middle grade. I'd say maybe 10 to 14 in that range there. It centers on a talking vole named Chains, who lives in Victorian London, who solves mysteries to figure out why he can speak. And his latest case involves a missing shipment of fish and offers some hints from his past, but someone he thought he could trust does not want him to learn the truth. And Chains will have to decide if knowing his origins is worth the danger it puts him in.
Thank you. That's a great summary. That's always a hard thing to do with your own book.
I know. Well, what my publisher had me do, which I think is really good, is that he had me do like a back cover copy, which I have, but then there's also like a 350 word one and one that has enough Twitter characters. And so I had like different variations at different lengths, which is also, I think, a helpful exercise to do.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like just the collection of bits and pieces of things that you end up with as an author. You've got like 4 or 5 different versions of your bio, depending on how many words they want, and different taglines and 2-sentence summaries up to, your full synopsis and things. It's like you use those all in different places, depending on
different iterations.
Who you're reaching.
Yeah. And usually I don't include the Four Corners bit, but because of where we are, I feel like it's especially important.
Well, and with this one, you being a librarian and knowing how books are looked at and what information goes out to people, whether academic or bookstores, like books get listed in particular ways. Did that help you with figuring out how to present your book?
Most definitely. I worked at the Farmington Public Library. I did select there, but it was adult books. But there's still, you get to know the vendors that libraries use and different things. You also get patron requests. So you get an idea as far as what people are asking for, specifically in those areas. But when I moved to Sacramento, I was the selector for Sacramento's 28 library system, and I did all kidlit, so ages 0 to 18. And I got to figure out what designates picture book, what designates lower middle grade versus upper middle grade, and kind of what young adult books were on the forefront of everyone's conversations and that kind of thing.
That's really cool, because I think that is a challenging thing for authors, especially today, because genres aren't as clear cut. And there's a lot of genre bending and blending of multiple things, and, 3 or 4 different genres put together. And so it's like, how do I describe my book?
And even librarians struggle with this. I'll give you a concrete example of something that happened. This was at the Sacramento Public Library. A cataloger who is no longer there, which is probably a good thing, because what happened was this cataloger decided that anything not of like the real world was considered science fiction. And they had no like fantasy sticker. So sometimes you'll see in libraries, books will have a science fiction sticker or a romance sticker, that kind of thing on the spine. And because of this cataloger, the collection still has Game of Thrones books with alien stickers on them. And so What'll often happen is basically cataloging has to do with the findability of your book on the shelf. Depending on what subject headings it's under and how that library categorizes their books, it will determine how easy or hard it is to find your book in the collection.
So knowing like how to describe it and where to place it can be really helpful to authors.
Challenging,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I actually recommend that to people the next time they're like struggling. Be like, go talk to a librarian.
Yeah. Or even also, you can do, there's WorldCat is a great place to look. It's worldcat.org. And you can look up your book and you can see which libraries carry it and also what subject headings and call numbers are associated with your book.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging my tangent into how to place your book. So getting back to your book, I happen to know what voles are because at my previous residence, we had an infestation of them.
Infestation, I feel, is a strong word. I saw that
they were destroying everything.
Yeah. Oh.
they were a little bit of a problem.
That's fair.
They were like eating tree roots and killing our trees. And so it was like, okay, we got to find a way to deal with them. But they are cute. Okay. But for people who are not familiar with voles, tell us what they are.
So they are in the rodent family, and they're bigger than mice and a little bit jowlier than rats. And so just basically like on the way to hamster, but not quite. And usually, like you said, they're found in fields. Sacramento had its own quote unquote infestation. That was the headline in the newspaper. And I get it. It does feel like a lot, but I do still feel infestation is a little strong. But usually what will happen near here is there's a place near Sacramento called El Dorado Hills, and there's a lot of fields up there. And once every couple of years, either they'll have a drought or something, and then the resources aren't as plentiful. And so then the voles have to go to invade other areas that are, such as people's farms, like your experience. My vole is specifically what is known as a bank vole, and those are specific to Europe. And the tails end up a little bit longer, and the ears are slightly bigger.
Well, and I'm looking at the cover as we talk because I have your website up. And the illustration on the front is really cute. And we'll talk about that in a minute because I really like how that turned out. But as far as like the depiction of Chains on the front cover and his size, because you're describing kind of something a little smaller than maybe how Chains is portrayed in the book because he has an interesting history.
He does. He is technically an experiment. And he'll find out more about why that is and what that means in the book. But the experiment kind of made him larger than the average vole. So he's more kind of like the size of, I would say, like a small pillow.
Thinking about this being children's literature geared toward that kind of 10 to 14 age range, I liked the size that he was because he wasn't like so small that he didn't feel like, I'm going to say person with like quotes around it,
Right.
Like a full character. Like he had a presence to him where he was interacting with the world and with people in a way that I think would have been a little bit harder to achieve. Not impossible, because you've got like Mouse and the Motorcycle and fun things like that, Despero. Yeah. But I felt like that fit really well with his role in the story and the things that he needed to do and accomplish. And not being like, this itty bitty little guy that nobody would have seen. Well, that actually
makes me feel better because I did struggle with that at one point. I was like, should I make him so big? But it's like, that's how he came and that's how he demanded to be. So I said, okay, that's what we're doing.
Just gotta let the characters make the choices.
Well, and that's essentially how he came to me. He came very fully formed, very fully fleshed out, demanding to be written down, and very insistent he was a vole. And I basically told him, no one knows what that is. And he said, I don't care, write me down anyway. I basically just let him speak. Some really great advice I got regarding dialogue is try not to make the characters speak, just kind of sit back and let them speak to you. And that's essentially what I've done with him.
Yeah, I like that. I think dialogue is something that can be really challenging for a lot of authors. Some people it comes really naturally to. And then others, it's really a challenge. And I think part of it is like overthinking or trying to find the right voice for each character and trying to sometimes like stylize the dialogue too much to where it just doesn't flow.
That was one. Right. And I that's why I didn't want to make his dialogue too stilted, because I wanted it to flow and I didn't want it to sound like really bad, like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins kind of a situation. But yeah, it's basically one thing is I'm very much a grammarian as a fellow English enthusiast, literature enthusiast. So when I first started writing, I actually had to dial back my formality in my grammar, because that's not how people or animals, I mean, I know animals don't talk, but you know what I mean. It's, you just feel free to just kind of loosen that up a bit and just kind of, it's okay to be a little more informal.
Well, and you're also writing for children. And this is something like I was aware of, but I didn't think about as much before getting into teaching at the public school level. But vocabulary and the expectations for different age groups. And I still deal with that, like writing for adults or upper teen YA. And I'm one where like I intentionally like to push readers. I will use words that are less familiar. So I'm like, well, most people have Kindles or phones or, something right there that I think it's good to stop and be like, I don't know what that word means. I can look it up. We should always be expanding our vocabularies. It's really good. I will push in that way. But with children's literature, you have to be a little bit more aware and a little bit more intentional with your vocabulary.
Absolutely.
Because there are, with some exceptions, but there are, kind of groups of words for different ages that are going to be familiar and going to let them like read at a comfortable pace that they can understand and not be frustrated by. And that may be something, being a librarian, this was very easy for you. Or did you have to kind of go through that in your editing process or working through your vocabulary?
I had to dial back my vocabulary. My vocabulary is way too advanced for even probably most adults. So I had to really be like, okay, because what will happen as a writer, you want to find the best word that fits in that slot. And sometimes the best word is a complicated one. And so what was really great about my publisher is he was really helpful in helping me figure out, which words to dial back that I needed to. I think it also helps when writing for children is to kind of really put yourself in that headspace rather than as an adult looking backward, because otherwise it'll feel stilted to them and it won't feel like something they can relate to. Because, some people make the mistake of, I'm going to teach a lesson, but sometimes that comes down as talking down to that age group when that's not what the writer intended. And so I really try to, two of my biggest influences were one, The Babysitter's Club. If you want to get into a middle grade voice, read those books. They are fabulous. And I think they've updated because they originally came out in the late 1980s, which was perfect for me because that's right when I needed them. But look at the newer ones, because I think they've updated for things like technology and things. But just like the voice there is a really powerful middle grade one. And my other influence, obviously, maybe this is why I wrote in Britain, was Roald Dahl. And his voice, particularly in the book Matilda, where, again, the vocabulary is somewhat advanced, but you get enough of a context and you get enough fun in there. I think that's also one of the reasons I really enjoy writing for children. It's not that adult books aren't fun. Some really much are, but there's just this element of adult literary fiction that, has to be very, very serious. And taking itself very seriously. And kids just want to have fun. And I think I also tap into that because I had an interesting childhood. I did grow up in Northern California and in the 90s, but I had parents who were a lot older. My dad was 45 years old when I was born. And so I grew up in this household where, it's fine to be a kid sometimes, but because my dad is a silent generation Midwesterner, children are seen and not heard. And I longed for that fun and just to be able to just be silly and not worry about other people's perceptions. So I think that's really important in kid lit, just to kind of, not put on any kind of airs.
Well, it's kind of funny. I have a writer friend that I made, probably a decade ago or something. And we were in this online writers group. think still exists, but I haven't participated in a while, called The Next Big Writer. And it was kind of like a online workshop. Like you could post a chapter, get feedback, and then you had to provide feedback on so many other chapters before you could post another one. And so it was a fun system, and it kind of encouraged you to participate and make friends and build a community of writers, which I really loved about it. And I had met her, and kind of you found like your group of people who enjoyed your same things, and we read each other's stuff. And at the time, she had been working on a middle grade book, kind of loosely based on a student that she had had. She was a teacher for a long time. And I can't remember what she named the character, but it was like so-and-so in his messy desk, and something along that line of just this kid who could never stay organized and always had paper flying out of his desk everywhere. Just his struggles of learning to be, a little bit more organized and on top of it. And it was middle grade, and she wanted illustrations to be part of it. And at the time, this was before Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Captain Underpants and things like that. And nobody would take it. They're like, middle grade doesn't need pictures. Like, you can't sell a middle grade book with illustrations. And so, like, everybody just kept shooting her down. Yeah. And I was like, oh, actually, one of the most successful things in the last, while. I think that there was kind of this sense at the time in publishing of like, oh, no, they've stepped beyond picture books. They're out of chapter books. This group of kids, like, they need more serious stuff. It's like, actually, they're still kids.
No, they don't.
And they still want fun, and they want to get away from the serious stuff that's already in their lives.
Exactly.
Let them be kids a little bit longer. That goes away so quickly.
100%. That brings up kind of two things. One, yes, the thing about rules in publishing is it's okay to bend them. And I think I wish I learned that sooner. It's just like, don't discount yourself just because, they're not doing this in publishing. Well, maybe not yet. Maybe not until you do something. And the second thing is kind of circling back to the illustration. It was really important to me to have a good illustrator to help bring James and his world to life, because Artemisia has this really great model where, as an author, I have a lot of autonomy to choose what illustrator I want, what kind of font I want, that kind of thing. And so I went to the SCBWI website, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And if you remember, you can look at illustrator portfolios. And I happened across Lena Mulberg's portfolio, and I just fell in love with it. And so I actually reached out to her and I asked my publisher, and he was able to give her a separate contract. And she was great to work with because we actually worked in a program called Mila Note, where I could upload images and then she could comment on them, and then she could put images and I could comment on those. And it was just a really good collaboration. I have not yet met her in person. She lives, I believe, in British Columbia area of Canada. But it was a really great collaborative process because the illustrations really do inform the dialogue and vice versa, and even at the middle grade level. And so, I think it's really important that illustrations are paramount to Kid Lit. Even covers of young adult books, I feel, are really just, an active part of that conversation.
Well, I think especially at that age where there's still a lot that's unfamiliar. Like, how many of your readers picked up this book already knowing what a vole looked like?
Nobody
Probably
did.
not too
Nobody
many.
knows. No.
Maybe a few who've had them in their yards, but even, Victorian England, what do those clothes look like?
Right.
What would the town look like? They may think like, oh, England, like a palace and Big Ben, like those might be a couple of things that they know about England. And without some visual cues to help that age group where this may be a completely foreign setting to them, it helps bring those mental images back into play to help them more accurately create in their mind what you're trying to communicate to them. Because it's hard to give all of that just in words that they're going to understand while still trying to tell a good story.
Exactly. And it was really important for me, even though this is a fictional story, to be as accurate as I could as far as the setting went. As a librarian, research is one of my love languages. And so I had a great time finding I would actually find and upload old maps, actual photos of children, from this time period, just to make sure that the depiction was as accurate as possible. Although I did have a reviewer who lives in England say, well, actually, you would go north here and not south. And I was like, oops, oh well.
Probably a detail most people will forgive.
Yeah. But and it's okay if you don't get it 100%, but I really did try to capture that era as best I could. I was inspired. I mean, a lot of my family way back is British, like it's all just British Isles. And I also go to this every year in Northern California. They have this Dickens Christmas Festival, or I think they call it the Dickens Christmas Fair, that they do in the Bay Area every year. And they turn the inside of this warehouse into just Victorian England. You just walk in and it's like you're there. So that was, I think, part of what inspired the setting as well.
Oh, that's really fun. Don't have anything like that here. That's unfortunate. Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the accuracy, because I think sometimes in children's literature, there can be an idea of like, oh, kids won't notice. I don't really have to look into it that much. Like it's imaginary, type of things. And given some of the controversy currently with what exactly does a memoir mean and accuracy and all that with certain books that are in a lot of trouble. Those definitions of what level of accuracy something needs. Like we have historical fiction. So where's the play between accurate historical facts versus fictional things that you make up? Because I think there is an important balance there, especially with historical fiction, even in children's literature.
Especially in children's literature, because the thing is, as someone who writes for children, I have always firmly believed that children are a lot smarter than people give them credit. And that's why, when we talk about things like censorship and things, the thing about it is basically some children need books that talk about hard things because they're already exposed to hard things. And it's possible to present things in a kid-friendly way rather than just trying to pretend that they don't understand. Kids are actually very intuitive, and there's a lot that they can pick up on. And so, again, in writing for children, I really wanted to honor that as well. It's just we're all part of the world together, and there are things in the world that aren't great, but we can explain these to you in a way that makes sense, in an age-appropriate way, rather than just trying to shield. And I think that's a big sticking point for me, too, because, again, my old-fashioned, I love my parents, but they were very much like, it was a very overprotected kind of a situation. So I learned a lot of things late. And what happens in that kind of a situation is you eventually learn it, but I basically learned everything all at once. And that in itself was a kind of shock, if that makes sense. And so part of me would have rather it be presented to me in an age-appropriate way gradually. And I know each parent is different, and, each parent has, absolute authority as far as, what they want to expose their kids to. But at the same time, children need to see themselves as Catherine Applegate, I think, once said, what about the child that needs that book?
Well, and if you think too, this exposing kids to stories about other people, other places, other situations, often, especially at this age, this is going to be their first encounter with that. And if it's presented inaccurately, like those first experiences stick with us. They leave an impact. And if you're, as the author, presenting someone in a way that is not going to help them with future experiences with that same topic or situation, you've kind of contributed to setting up this like false idea or, expectation or something. And that may seem like a really small thing, but
it's not.
It's not. There is a lot of my early memories that have to do with books and different types of media. I didn't really grow up with TV.
There's actually a really great quote. I think it's from Carl Jung, but I could be wrong about this. But if there's nothing so much as, and I'm butchering the quote, but it's basically, there is nothing more burdensome to a child than the unlived life of a parent. My parents were also weird in that they try to compensate for what they feel they didn't have, but also very much like some parents see their children as an extension of them. Some parents see their children as like, oh, it's just this object I get to mold. And then, some parents treat their children like emotional support animals. So it just kind of varies. It's just all the more that, kids need a way to feel seen. And I think that's one of the reasons why a big theme in my book is what we call found family, is because sometimes you feel like, yeah, my parents are doing, your parents are doing the best they can, but sometimes it's really hard to relate to them and vice versa. And it's really helpful to find either adults in your life or kids your age who kind of speak your communicative language, who you can be yourself around without judgment. So that was something that was really important to me as I wrote this as well.
Thinking of themes, trying to work with theme on my student, the first thing they go to is like, it's the lesson learned or the moral of the story. And it's like, well, sometimes that's part of it, but let's, expand a little bit. But I think with yours, like, you have multiple themes, you have a lot that you touch on, finding your voice, being independent and being able to solve problems, even as a small person or a small animal. But the one found family that really stuck out to me a lot, I think that's something for like me personally, I've had to collect people in my life to have that support and friendship and love. And I think that especially today, a lot of kids face that, where maybe they don't have everything that they need at home, but they still want and need all of those different aspects. And sometimes we do have to put ourselves out there, reach out, ask for help. And you see that with your characters. And I looked at the clock, we're already getting short on time. So I'm sorry about that. But
no, it's okay.
But yeah, I did want to ask, kind of as we start to wrap up, for parents or for children who are looking at, choosing an option, and your book is one of those options, what would you put out there as something that you hope that people take away from the story of Chains and his experience?
Yeah, that you actually have the option to ask questions. For a long time in my life, I didn't realize how much autonomy I had, even when it came to bullying. And, all kids, I think, deal with bullying. I think it's something that's rampant. And essentially knowing that, yes, I can stand up for myself in a way that is productive. Obviously, you don't want to be going around, causing destruction everywhere. But at the same time, it's how do I deal with my feelings in a way that's helpful to me and to those around me? For me, it was in particular because I'm neurodiverse. I am inattentive ADHD, which I was diagnosed with at 17. And for that reason, I did struggle socially for a long time, not just with bullies, just that with trying to figure that, like, how to communicate with other people and how to find that space of belonging took me a really long time. And not just necessarily wanting to fit into any kind of a mold, but like, where do I feel my most authentic self? And I have the autonomy and the ability to find that if I don't currently have that in my life. And the thing about bullying, too, is that I am thankful for it in a strange way, because it did teach me a healthy sense of empathy, which is also, I think, something that both kid lit and adult lit, just reading a book helps put you in the footsteps of somebody else in a way that you might not otherwise experience. I would say I want this book to offer that, but I also want it to be a place where people feel like they can have a comfortable space. Because for me, books were my refuge. When I read a Babysitter's Club book, I can feel like, oh, here's a group of people that I can hang out with for a moment, and to bring that kind of joy to people.
I love that. Thank you. And tell people where they can find you and where they can find the book online.
So my website is Karen B as in boy, that's my middle initial. So KarenBMcCoy.com. There is a Buy My Book page, and that's all the buy links. So it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, IndieBound, all those usual online places.
And for libraries or schools that might be interested, is there anywhere else they should look in order to have that?
Public libraries use, I think, in my experience, both Ingram and Baker and Taylor. I am on both those platforms. There's also, I believe, Libby and Overdrive, and as well, academic libraries use something called Gobi. That's GOBI. I'm also on Gobi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and for sharing your book. I really enjoyed it.
That means a great deal.
Thank you again. It was great to talk to you.
You too. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.